everyone, and welcome to Talking Over Tea. In today's video, we wanted to share all of the books that we read in the month of February and just talk a bit about them and just share our thoughts. We didn't read a whole lot. At least I didn't feel like I read too much in February. I did better in the first half of the month, and then things got a little crazy, but I still was pretty happy with the month overall. And we're looking forward to sharing these books with you.
So the first book that I read is Ogre Enchanted by Gail Carson Levine. This is a companion novel to Ella Enchanted, and I had no idea what this was going to be like when I first started it. It's not, the style is the same as Ella Enchanted, but none of the characters are the same, and it just has kind of a different feel. This is about Evie, who gets turned into an ogre because she refuses a marriage proposal, and the fairy Lucinda comes and she's not happy that she did that. So she turns her into an ogre, and ogres are extremely hated in this society. So she's supposed to accept a marriage proposal in like 60 days or something like that. And she goes on this journey to go like live with the ogres, and like all this stuff happens. But I actually enjoyed it, even though all the ogre stuff was kind of weird, and she's like half ogre and half human, so I don't know, it's kind of weird. I did definitely like Ella Enchanted better, but I thought this one was a pretty good sequel, kind of, just to kind of keep going in that world.
The first book I read this month was Vivid by Ashley Bustamante. I'll be talking about this book in a video that will be coming out next month, but I will share a little bit about what it is. It is a YA book about this girl who lives in a world where there is color magic. So there's blue magic and red magic, and then there is also yellow magic, which has been outlawed because it is seen as not safe anymore. So the main character goes to this school where she learns about her magical abilities, and then she finds out that yellow magic is not quite what she thought it was. I ended up liking the book. I think I gave it 3.5 stars. It followed some tropes that I don't love, but it was also pretty enjoyable overall. I intend on reading book 2, and it was a pretty solid story.
Like Amelia said, the next few books that we're going to talk about are going to be in a video next month, so we might kind of breeze through them a little bit. But yeah, you'll hear more in-depth thoughts later. I read Bravely by Maggie Stiefvater. This is not a Brave retelling. It actually happens after the events in the movie, and I'm not sure how old Merida is, but she's a little bit older. I like the author's style of writing in her other books, so I knew I was going to enjoy at least that part, but I wasn't sure because she can also be a little bit weird and, I don't know, stuff that I don't really like she writes about, but I actually enjoyed this a lot more than I thought. The main themes are kind of about change and family, and I feel like most YA books don't talk about anything like that, and they usually, like, the character doesn't really like their family or something, but this, it is kind of weird because it's like, you know, Celtic gods and stuff, but I actually enjoyed it a lot more than I was thinking I would. It's not like my absolute favorite, but I thought it was pretty good.
Next, I read Nancy's Mysterious Letter by Carolyn Keene. This was a pretty enjoyable but typical Nancy Drew book. I think I gave it 3 stars, which is usually what I give books in this series. I went quite in depth on this one in kind of what annoyed me, so I won't go into too much on that, but basically the premise is that Nancy finds that there is another person named Nancy Drew, and she is mistaken for that person and needs to now find the Nancy Drew that someone is trying to give an inheritance to. And yeah, it was a pretty typical book, and it definitely had some common things that annoy me in this series, but it was fine overall.
Next, I read Mortal Sight by Sandra Fernandez Rhodes. You read this last year, right? This was one of her favorite books?
I think it made it on at least somewhere on the list, but I don't think it was one of my favorites.
Okay, well, you did really like it. So I read this mostly because she did, and I had it from the library, and I was a little bit not wanting to read it because of these, in Enclave? The Enclave books are like thick. They just feel huge, even though they're not that big. But I did read it, and I actually read it pretty quickly. I did really enjoy it. It is pretty slow moving, would you say? I don't know. It felt like not a whole lot happened, but I wasn't bored. This is about 17-year-old Sierra who has these visions, and every time she has a vision, her mom and her move to another town, but she really doesn't want to do that this time. She ends up realizing that her visions actually have meaning behind them, and she stumbles upon a place that is trying to conquer the beasts that she sees in her visions. I did enjoy this book. It wasn't my absolute favorite, but I did like how it's just really full of like art, and it has a lot to do with Paradise Lost, and it just kind of felt a little more, I don't know if scholarly isn't the right word, but YA books are typically really dumb, and I don't know, this just felt a little bit more like it had something in it.
I next read The Dark Unwinding by Sharon Cameron. This is about a girl who goes to live with her supposedly crazy uncle and realizes that he has been employing 900 people who were previously working at the workhouse. And basically the book is her deciding whether or not she is going to keep this a secret and risk causing herself a kind of uncomfortable future. I didn't love this book. The main character really got on my nerves, and I also thought the decision that had to be made was extremely easy to realize where it was going. It was okay overall. Some of the characters were interesting and the idea behind it was interesting, but it just lacked a lot of things that I enjoy, and I don't plan on reading the next book in the series.
Next, I read 3-Act Tragedy by Agatha Christie. This one starts off with a dinner party, and Perot is there and a bunch of other people are there. There's like an actor named Charles Cartwright and just a bunch of characters. They just start the party. They're just talking, everybody's talking, and this one guy just dies. And nobody knows why he did, and nobody knows like how it happened. It seems like it was very natural, doesn't seem like it's not murder or anything. But Charles Cartwright, who is the actor, thinks that he has a suspicion that it was murder, so he kind of starts looking into it. And actually Perot isn't in this one until like the very end. Well, not the very end, but he doesn't come in and do a whole lot for a long time. But I did enjoy this. It has a very big twist at the end, which is always kind of fun because the whole time I'm like trying to figure out who in the world did it. And I'm like, I have no idea. I'm terrible at solving mysteries and I never get it right. I never have any clue. So that the twists are always pretty big for me. But yeah, this one was pretty good. It wasn't definitely not like one of my favorites. They're all kind of similar except for like a couple that I just really love.
Next I read Sunreach by Brandon Sanderson and Jancy Patterson. I have talked about this series of novellas so many times, so I'm not going to go into too much detail. I think it's a given that I just really enjoyed it, and at this time, I really needed something that I knew I loved, and I just needed a comfort read, and it definitely was that for me. Without spoiling too much of the series, this is basically about one of the main characters' flight mates who is looking into figuring out how they can find hyperdrives, basically. Like, they need technology that can transport them to other dimensions and planets, and this book is basically about them figuring out more about this. So yeah, I really enjoyed it, and I don't know when I'll read the other two novellas, but I was really happy to just read something that I knew I liked so much.
Next I read Veiled Rose by Anne Elizabeth Stengel, and this is the second book in the Tales of Goldstone Wood series. I read the first one last year, I think, and I remember like not really liking it. I think I gave it 4 stars, but it was kind of like just because I gave it that and I didn't really like it. I did actually really enjoy this one. I was thinking I wouldn't like it because I remembered not liking the first one, and I was like, oh well, I'll just read this just because I got it from the library, and I actually did really like it. And now I'm wondering if maybe I did actually like the first one too. But the problem was I can't really remember what happened in the first one, and I feel like it would have made this one better. I think that these are supposed to be like fairy tale retellings, like really loosely. I'm not sure if this one was like Beauty and the Beast. I can't say what the first one's about because I can't really remember. But this one was about a girl who's living in the forest, and she wears like all these veils and all these like loose clothing. You can't see anything, like you can't see what she looks like. And so a boy who is in a house by the woods for the summer ends up like finding her, and they end up having this friendship and they just play together. But everyone else thinks that she is like this beast in the forest. And so she doesn't leave the forest at all. And it has a lot more to it, but it's really hard to explain. I don't know. It is a very slow, but I don't know why. I just really liked it.
Next, I read The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde. Feel free to enjoy the beauty of this cover that Maddie owns. This book is about a man who is extremely beautiful, like just
Like
amazing.
this?
Yes, so beautiful. And he gets his portrait painted by this painter. He basically prays that this portrait will take on all his wrinkles and aging and sins and everything, and it comes true. I read this for school, and basically by the first chapter, I had written out a full page of notes and quotes and things that I liked, and I was super excited. As the book went on, though, it was just the characters were so very awful that the enjoyment did go away a little bit, but I just really, really enjoyed the writing style, and it was right up my alley in the prose and the beautiful language and just all the interesting little sentences. And I didn't love a lot of things about this book, especially with how horrible the characters were, but I think I definitely pick up maybe some poetry or some other works by Oscar Wilde in the future. And even though I disagree so much with everything he writes, he just is a very good writer, and I think I definitely like to look into more of his writing.
See, I told you were gonna love it and hate it at the same time. Then the last book I read is The Turn of the Screw by Henry James. And I read this for the February, I read this for my February book in the Read Your Bookshelf Challenge. And I am so glad that this was short, because this was like one of the weirdest books I've ever read. It's like a horror, kind of horror book about a, what's it called? A governess who goes to look after these two children, and whose parents have died, and they're in their uncle's care, and she's supposed to not like be in contact with the uncle at all. Like she can't tell him anything. She has to deal with everything. And so there are ghosts, I guess. They're ghosts. I don't know. This book was so confusing. Like, I didn't even know the first sentence. I was like, I have no idea what's happening already. And that's just kind of the whole book. And I don't know if it's just because I don't understand. Like, I had no idea what he was writing. I don't really know what the purpose of this book was, but it was weird. And one sentence had 10 commas in it. So, yeah. I mean, I'm kind of glad I read it because it was interesting. But yeah, it's kind of weird. But if you want something that's kind of short and really hard to understand, then you should definitely try this one.
Lastly, I read Daughter of Light by Morgan L. Plessy, which is a fantasy book about a girl who realizes that she has this special power by a marking on her hand, and she goes to live at the White City to basically guard the princess, I think. And this was definitely the best Morgan L. Plessy book I have read so far, and I've read quite a few. It was a pretty slow story, and it's a very big book, but I don't know, there was something about it that I really liked. It was just a solid story, nothing too fancy or amazing, but I enjoyed the characters, and I didn't have any like big problems with it. It was just a nice story. I don't know how soon I would read the next book, but I really enjoyed this one and plan on reading that one at some point.
Lastly, I am reading Wind Daughter by Joanna Ruth Meyer. This is the companion novel to Echo North. I thought I didn't really like Echo North, but I'm liking this one way more. So clearly, if it's a companion novel, apparently I like the second one better, unless it's by Gail Carson Levine. Anyway, I'm not very far in it. I'm literally 70 pages in, so I haven't really read very much. But it is about a girl who is the daughter of the North Wind, who was turned into a human. She is very, 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 very sensitive to everything. So she does not like to be inside, and she doesn't like crowds, and she doesn't like sound, and she doesn't really like anything except for her bees. She is a beekeeper, and she likes to be out on the mountain and in the wind, and she isn't bothered by the cold. The dad he's not the North Wind anymore, so I guess the North Wind has just been like let loose for too long, and so now it is like unwinding everything or something like that. So things are like being devoured. Something happens where her parents aren't there anymore. They just kind of like shatter. So she is supposed to go and get the North Wind so that the whole world doesn't get destroyed. So that is all I know about right now. But I'm actually enjoying it quite a bit.
I'm currently reading Jude the Obscure by Thomas Hardy right now as a part of the Read Your Bookshelf Challenge. I am only about 130 pages in out of 500, and so will definitely not make it for February, but I'm gonna continue and plow through. I don't even know how to explain what this book is about. I feel like it is just about Jude's life, as some classics are. They just kind of go through from childhood to some time in adulthood, and I think that's about what this is gonna be. I don't really know what to think yet. I'm hoping it'll be good.
You're not really wanting to read it, though, are you?
Yeah, I'm not super into it, but I think I'll get there, and definitely gonna get the majority of this done through audiobook if I end up finishing it soon.
Okay, so that was everything that we read this February. Like we said, the first half we read so much, and you'll understand why next month. And then because we read so much, I feel like we were kind of just completely burnt out.
Yeah.
And we didn't really read anything after that.
I think life was also just a little crazy.
Definitely.
I had a lot of school going, and when that happens, I don't read a whole lot, and yeah.
Yeah, definitely, yeah. We had a lot going on, but I'm actually pretty proud of how much we read, because my goal this year isn't to read 100 books like it usually is, so I'm not as concerned with how many books I read in a month like I usually am. So I'm kind of surprised that I even read this many. But yeah, I feel pretty good. I liked a lot of the books that I read, and I'm excited to see what I read next month. We want to thank you for watching this video, and we will see you in the next one.